Bruce DuMont back with hour number 2 of Beyond the Beltway. Thank you very much for joining us from coast to coast and border to border around the world at beyondthebeltway.com. If you'd like to call us up, 1-800-723-8289. In this hour, we're going to be talking about the economy and what is likely to happen in the future. And we've got 3 great guests. We have Mike Miller, who's been a guest on this show for many, many years, economist from DePaul University. We have Terry Savage, the nationally known finance columnist who appears in newspapers all over the country and is on television frequently. And Rick Levin, who's been an old friend of this program. He is in real estate, and also he's an auctioneer. And so he deals with the commercial real estate issues in real estate in this country. So, folks, thanks very much for joining us. Mike Miller, I'm going to begin with you. With all the dire news that is out there, and there's reports every couple of days. We're close to huge percentages. Another 3 million people went on unemployment last week. Of all those indicators that come out periodically, which is the one that you watch most closely to indicate what the future might be?
The future, it would be employment, because you need people to produce. GDP is expected to decline at an annual rate, somewhere between 35 and 41% during the second quarter. And that number can only turn around if people get back to work. So looking at it, it's also whether firms will hire the people back. So the future will depend a lot upon what is called payroll employment. And that's a measure of people who work for other people, like I do at the university.
Terry Savage, what would you add to that answer?
I think the thing I look most at is consumer confidence, which is like an oxymoron today. There is no consumer confidence at all. And I think tied in with jobs, which Mike is absolutely correct on. Today we had Jay Powell saying that the Fed chairman saying he expects unemployment could reach 30%. So that just destroys not only current feelings and ability to pay for things, but the confidence to plan ahead and build and grow for the future. So combination of jobs and the emotional side of it, which I'll call consumer confidence, I think are just devastating right now.
Rick Levin, elaborate if you will, and also from a commercial real estate perspective, what are the indicators that you look at?
Well, obviously, the big question right now is, what is anything worth? And that is a real troubling question. Really, the 3 categories that you come to think of right away are office buildings. About 97% of Goldman Sachs workers are working from home, and it appears to be working. When we get past this pandemic, are a lot of companies going to let a lot of their employees stay home and work? Like Jack Dorsey from Twitter said, he'll let his employees work from home forever. Well, what does that mean for the value of office buildings and businesses that surround office buildings that cater, restaurants and all the rest, parking facilities, for example? Then you've got, of course, an easy one, shopping centers with Neiman Marcus and JCPenney and all the other problems that we're seeing in retail. That was coming already because of Amazon. And then in the residential sector, for 30 years, people wanted to move to the city center and live in vertical high rises. Now people are scared to get in the elevator and push the button. So they might want to move back out to the suburbs and have 5 acres. So there's a total disruption in the real estate market right now.
Do you see that as well, Mike? I mean, that's a pretty gloomy, I think it's correct, frankly. It's kind of a gloomy look at what the future is like and the significant changes in our lifestyle. Do you see all of those, and what would you add to it? As a college professor, I mean, have you looked at your last full college course of face-to-face?
It certainly may be the case. And what was interesting is my last in-class discussion I was teaching at United Airlines. And it was during this crunch that we were together, and to see the students come in and not be sure if tomorrow they would have a job. These are MBA students. This was really wrenching, both for the students and myself. And there is a chance we will not be in the classroom come the autumn. And I'm getting towards the end of my career. I may hardly ever get back into the classroom. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Just like I understand that firms want us to maybe work from home, but I'm one, for example, that I like to keep home and work separate. Those are 2 different lives. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that mixing work and home for everybody or for large numbers of people is necessarily a productive thing to do.
Terry, look into your crystal ball. What would you add to the picture that is being painted tonight about what the future of work and employment is in the United States?
So we're talking about some, as they would say, high-class problems to have. Because we're talking about where we will work as if we know we will work.
Yeah.
The other thing Chairman Powell said was that of the households that had workers' income under around $40,000 or less, 40% of them are out of a job. I mean, like half of the people that make the least amount of money are out of work is another way of saying that. And while professors and TV reporters and so forth have savings to tide them over, we're talking about a lot of people in America that are really lining up for food. People that had jobs that thought they were sort of okay, they didn't have savings. But now they talk about people that didn't have jobs and whose children got their nourishment from a school lunch program. Mm-hmm. And now don't have that. So some cracks in our society. Everybody, pontificated about income inequality. It's an economic phrase. It's a political phrase. It has just become a reality check, and that's going to change America too on the way out.
Yeah, and I'm convinced, Bruce, that the government or the people who are making decisions, especially in state and local government, are not taking into account these effects on people's lives. I think that they think that, I've heard how many of them say, if I can save just one life, I'm willing to destroy the lives of millions upon millions of other people. And I think there's a really bad calculation here. And we have, I think to use the old expression, the cure has been much worse than the disease.
Are we also learning that those who are at the lower rung of the economic ladder, who are doing all of the important work for us now, whether it's packing our grocery shelves or delivering food to us, who are minimum wage or less, usually less than minimum wage in tips, and the hospitality economy, are we realizing now that these are people that they're important to us, and they deserve more than a minimum wage when business gets back? And is this a lesson that big business and let's say the major food companies are going to have to realize that they can't get along with paying these people that are so important? I mean, we're describing them as heroes. We're flying over their cities with Blue Angels. Rick, is this going to be a major learning experience for those who will be very successful when they come back, but they're going to have to pay their employees more money? I need a 15-second answer to that.
Yeah, I think the answer is no, because at the end of the day, I don't think those people can demand double the income that they're receiving right now, and I think they'll be willing to work for approximately the same wage that they're working for now. And it is a real shame. And we've had this problem for a long time in America, ever since 9/11, when firemen would run into a burning building, and yet you pay a person that plays Major League Baseball $2 million to sit on the bench. Yeah. And that has not changed at the moment.
We've got to pause. 1-800-723-8229. We're talking about the economy and the future of the United States and the world. Back shortly. Bruce DuMont back. We've got some comments. Paul Doerr is listening to the program this evening, a big fan of Mike Miller's. Larry Miller writes in, I did not deserve the stimulus money with my situation. I am donating to those that will need it. So thank you very much, Larry. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that appreciate it. Back to what the government is doing. Nancy Pelosi wants to spend another several $1 trillion on sending more money to individuals. My question to you is, on all this stimulus package, Rick, what is the commercial real estate industry getting out of this, if anything?
At the moment, people don't have to pay their home mortgages, and there's forbearance, so they'll eventually have to pay it. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, there aren't penalties if it's Fannie and Freddie, like most home mortgages are backed mortgages. As far on the commercial front, a lot of banks right now have been loath to foreclose. They're trying to cooperate with borrowers, especially small commercial owners. If they can document that they're not receiving their rents, they may give some temporary relief to those owners. But I would not say that people that decided to build a movie theater are going to be getting bailed out by the U.S. government because that was the real estate they chose to build.
Mm-hmm. Mike Miller, what is your assessment of the way in which the government is giving out money to people? Are they doing it wisely with proper guidance, or is it just Katie by the door?
I'm really torn on this. Normally, I would not be a fan of large stimulus packages such as this one, but in this case, the government caused all these problems. They made the decision to shut down the economy. To me, they're on the hook then to have to pay for it. However, they had to do it fast, and of course, it's been extremely blunt. Just like when Larry Miller, which, by the way, I think is my brother, when he wrote in, he didn't need that money, and he's a good man and he's going to give it away. But of course, why would we have a policy that would make sure that somebody like he gets that money? It's a very blunt situation. We're giving people who are on unemployment an extra $600, which means they have no desire to go back to work because they will have to take actual cut in the amount of money that's coming to them. All kinds of strange incentives in it. But at the same time,
Well, that's just
I
a
must
bad.
admit
That's a bad. That's a bad. Someone was not thinking ahead on that.
No, they were not thinking ahead on this. And we know, for example, even under normal times that unemployment compensation can add about 0.5% to the unemployment rate under normal times. And so, again, I'm really torn because the government, this is a unique event in that the government caused the whole dang thing.
Okay, Terry
It caused
Savage,
everything.
looking at the government's role, what, in your opinion, have they done right and what have they done wrong, as Mike has identified one area?
Let me tell you about something that most people listening tonight will have no idea about. And I wouldn't have either, except my website, terrysavage.com, went viral after I started 6-7 weeks ago when the stimulus came out. I decided I should know the questions and answers. And I posted a bunch of them. People post questions on, and it went viral. Google Chrome picked it up as where to look for stimulus answers, and hundreds of thousands of people in 1 week just swamped my site. And it's still, I'm a source for Facebook groups. Let me tell you what happened. This is so backwards. This is a quick rant, Bruce. The government sent out stimulus checks first to people who had tax refunds coming by direct deposit. I mean, you know the qualifications, the income qualifications. They also made it so that dependents 16 or under would get $500. But if your child was in college and listed as a dependent on your return, you didn't get the $500. But that's a problem for people that can afford to return stimulus payments. What they did is they started sending out stimulus payments to people who file tax returns. The next round would be people who get Social Security, retirement, and disability. And though they're bragging, they've sent out 130 million payments, they have not sent out, they're just starting to send out to people on Social Security. And
I know. I haven't gotten mine.
Okay, and Social Security, you make too much. And Social Security disability. But watch this. There are people, I didn't know this. There's a vast swath of people in America who receive something called SSI, Supplemental Security Income. They're the poorest of the poor. They don't file a tax return. For the first 3 or 4 weeks, the government said, all of you people will have to file a form that we'll put up online. They didn't realize these people don't have computers. They don't have smartphones. They couldn't get to the public library. It's closed to file. I and many others said to the IRS, this is insane. So then they said, all right, we'll put it on the same benefit card that you get your SSI. It's a debit card they give these people. And then all these people said, but we have children. And how will we get it for our children? The government said, now you have until May 5th to list your children as dependents and we'll send you benefits. And now I am inundated this past 10 days. Many people got their SSI on their card, their $1,200, but not one got the $500 for their 3 or 4 children. Now, whether you think we should be giving money to people for children or not is another political story.
Yeah.
We promised it. These people can't feed their children. There's a huge Facebook group that posted my name. And I've been trying to get to the IRS and saying, say something to these people. You're going to do another pass?
Yeah.
The government has been totally insensitive. That's the federal level. Don't get me started on our state benefits. That's another crisis for another segment here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one quick one, Bruce. Last November, I lost my beloved in-laws within 5 days. And guess what came into the mail or came into their bank account about 3-4 weeks ago?
Their checks.
Their checks. Now, I've returned them. I went online and found out that they all have to be returned. But see, that's the bluntness of a policy when you do it so quickly.
And
You know,
not
Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I'll take the contrary of view. I think the government, maybe not having enough ventilators and PPP equipment and all the rest, but I think in the handing out of $3 trillion to $6 trillion very quickly, I think they've done okay, and I'll tell you why. The physical ability to even cut checks at the U.S. Treasury is 5 million a week. They don't even have the presses to press more than 5 million checks a week. So you can't just say send out 50 million checks. Yes, of course, there's going to be fraud. And of course, we're from Chicago, so people in the cemetery vote. And of course, occasionally they get a check when someone's passed away. But I think the fact that the stock market is only down 15, 20%, and we don't see total civil unrest are actually positive attributes to what the government has done on the financial side of things here. I'm not talking about the long-term implications and unintended consequences like the $600 bonus, so people psychologically don't want to go back to work. But at the moment, approximately 2 months into this, I think they've done a fairly good job of doling out $3 trillion or more dollars. Even the SBA was overwhelmed with 14 years worth of loans in about a week or two.
Rick, however, are the American people getting hooked on this? Are they going to expect a check from the government every 6 or 7 months? That's part of what Nancy Pelosi is working on with her plan that is going nowhere in the Senate.
You don't even have to be a legal resident. We're going to send money out, part of the plan to illegal people in this country. But yes, this was part of Yang's plan. You might recall.
If it passed the Senate.
Send everybody minimum amounts of money every month so they can have a small amount of money in their pocket. Yes, I think the American people would get hooked on this, just like a Starbucks coffee every day.
Does everybody? Terry, are you worried about that the American people are going to get hooked on these checks from the government, even if they come late?
One of the things we know is that the only real way out of poverty is economic growth and jobs. We just know that. Right. You can't print your way out.
Nope.
Now, the states can't print their way out because they don't have the printing presses. The federal government, as Jay Powell said on TV today, can create an unlimited amount of money as long as the rest of the world is willing to buy our IOUs. And this week, the last 2 weeks, we've noticed that the foreign purchases and ownership of Treasury securities has declined markedly. When the world is in trouble, the whole world's money, the liquidity of the world runs to buy the safety of U.S. government IOUs, which is why we have such low, almost negative, but not negative, interest rates. The world is willing to lend the U.S. money. At some point, someone looks up and says, hey, wait a second. They're printing all this money. What is this worth? What kind of interest rate should we demand to compensate for the fact the money's worthless? And you look at the gold market today, it's been up over this weekend, close to $1,760 an ounce. We're getting back to our, because somewhere around the world, people are saying they're printing all that money. What's a dollar going to be worth? It's a problem.
Mike Miller.
Yeah, I agree that this could be a problem. Now, what happened when we did it during the Great Recession is that the money went into the banking system as what are called reserves. So something fancy called the monetary base rose, but the money supply itself did not, because the money didn't circulate. Now, eventually this money is going to begin to circulate. And since we're not producing, you have the issue of too many dollars chasing too few goods. I think that's what's behind that gold purchase. Now, I'm not a gold bug myself. I don't dabble in that kind of that particular market. But what they're concerned about is that all this money, which is being created out of thin air, is going to ultimately try to buy products that aren't there, and their prices are going to rise, which is going to result in inflation. And gold would be the place to be. I think that's what explains that the price of gold.
Yeah,
when-
perhaps my-
we've got to pause, Terry. We got to pause, and then we'll come back to you. And also, when we come back, I want everybody for the next 3 minutes to think about what's going to happen to that big mall that you live by. Is it ever coming back? And if it isn't coming back as a shopping mall, what is all that property? How can it best be used? We'll ask Rick Levin as well. I'm Bruce DuMont. Don't go away. David Rodriguez and Gloria Chevrolet are watching the show this evening. Thanks very much for tuning in, folks. And we've got three great guests in this hour, and we're going to let them take a moment and introduce themselves. And we're going to begin with Rick Levin. Rick, tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are tonight.
I am here in rainy Chicago, Illinois, and I have been for 30 years a real estate and personal property auctioneer all over the country for all kinds of real estate, from homes and shopping centers and office buildings to closed big post offices for the U.S. Postal Service, to personal property from cars and airplanes and vessels of all sizes for the U.S. Treasury and the IRS and the Secret Service, and hundreds of auctions for the FDIC during the Great Recession back in 2008 to 2012.
So you are looking forward to a very busy future.
It seems like when there's uncertainty in the economy, people tend to want to look towards auctions as a way to find the price of assets. Yes.
Okay. Terry Savage, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. For those that do not know, you're famous.
Oh, well, in your eyes.
She surely is.
I've been involved in the financial markets for years. I was a founding member and the first woman trader on the CBOE, Chicago Board Options Exchange, and today serve on the board of directors of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. But my career is in personal finance, television. I've written a syndicated column for more than 30 years. It's now syndicated by the Chicago Tribune, runs around the country. And my most recent book is a brand new third edition in November of The Savage Truth on Money. And the truths remain the same. It's very interesting, but other things will change, and the markets certainly will too.
Okay.
So my website's terrysavage.com.
terrysavage.com. And again, Savage Truth on Money. And Mike Miller.
I'm an economist at DePaul. I've had one job in my adult life. I finished my PhD at University of Pittsburgh, 1980, moved to Chicago to take the job at DePaul. And one cool thing is, of course, I'm a macroeconomist, so I'm an extremely busy man for the past couple of months.
And probably for the future.
Could be.
Rick, I want to go back to you because you've done a lot of work with shopping centers. And shopping centers have been sort of having a difficult time for almost several years now. As you look into your crystal ball, if they don't come back, what's likely to happen to all that property?
Well, obviously, the malls are often located right in the city center. So they're prominent properties in most communities around the country, at least the big ones. I think we will get past this COVID-19, but if you listen to Bill and Melinda Gates, there's going to be more viruses, pandemics like this in the next 25 years. So some malls will survive and do probably very well, but they're going to have to add more attractions like ice skating rinks and merry-go-rounds and all the rest. And of course, they'll have restaurants when it's safe to go back to a restaurant. Potential reuses, some have suggested things like warehousing or light warehousing for the Amazon packages. You can go pick them up if you can't pick them up at your home or at your condo building if the packages are too large. The other idea is reconfiguring the malls to build some type of single family or townhome or condominium living out in the outskirts of the malls in the parking lots. Especially with autonomous driving cars, you might not need so many parking lot land anyway. I think the bigger problem will come in the local municipalities who are counting on the sales tax revenue from those malls.
Yeah.
And when they see that revenue go away, and then they're going to have a bunch more constituents who vote, who they're going to have a harder time raising their property taxes to compensate for the lack of retail sales tax revenue.
Right.
That's going to be where the real fight comes in as to what to do at these malls.
Hmm. Terry Savage, again, I want to go back to the crystal ball again for you, and look at if you were a person who is out of work now, and let's say you're out of work, and let's put you in the $120,000 range. What would you be doing? Would you have confidence that you might be going back to your job that could keep you at that level, or would you be rolling the dice and trying to retrain yourself?
Well, sitting home is not a great time to retrain yourself, and you don't know what is going to pop in the economy after this is
Mhm.
over. Look, nobody ever got rich betting against America. That's a Warren Buffett saying, and I've said that myself a million times. We will come out of this. The economy will reopen, and as we've all said, it will be different. Different sectors will become important. Different sectors will need the skills that obviously, we're not going to have as many sales clerks in the shopping mall that Rick is going to turn into an ice skating rink or something like that. So um, that's the $1 zillion question. It's not just, we know we'll come through this. It's how will we get through this to the other side for individuals. But coming out of it, what are the skills that are going to be required? I mean, Rick, who was it? Was it you, Rick, that said, we pay basketball players $2 million to sit on the bench? Do you think our heroes are really going to be Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian? Or will America maybe readjust its sights and readjust its need for talent? Maybe we will pay people that we've learned are valuable nurses, doctors, and so forth more. So that's the two parts of the crystal ball are, okay, what happens now? Now, where does the stock market go? But how does the economy open up? Can we open safely? Will we have a second wave? Because surely a year from now, we'll have a vaccine, the economy will be open again. And then becomes that question, Bruce, you asked the toughest question of all. But will I be part of that new economy?
Hmm.
And it's something to think about, but it's very depressing just getting through this part.
Yeah. And what are you telling your students that are in their second or third year, Mike? What the
Oh
future might
man,
be for them?
I wish I could talk to them. Many of them have to finish up in a format they never intended. And one thing at the university, we're trying to do some surveys to find out, did students who did not choose to learn online, are they learning anything? Are they enjoying it? Or are they going to fight back and demand that this is a second-rate education, and they're going to demand cuts in tuition
Yeah.
and so forth? So
A
many
lot of
universities,
students are doing that.
I know they are, and lots of universities, and my own included, we live off of tuition revenue, and the outlook for the future is not at all bright, and it's going to change. Many universities are asking their people, including faculty, to take pay cuts, to work more, to teach more classes, to change the way they teach, and they want this all done yesterday. And so I have many colleagues who have never taught online before. I have, luckily, but within 3 weeks, they had to create an entire online class so that the students would have some way of
Hmm.
finishing out their degree or whatever. And this has been extremely disruptive. And
This
I
seems to
think
me
universities will be different.
this seems to be an opportunity, I think, for many non-for-profit institutions and museums to, if they don't have a strong education mission now, it has to be turned into one with a collaborative effort with the public schools in their community, and
Sure.
also community colleges and full-time colleges. Let's go to
Yeah.
Tom. He's listening to us in Sharon, Pennsylvania on WPIC. Go ahead, Tom. You're on the air.
Good evening, Bruce, and good evening to your guests. I want to answer your question about the malls, but first I want to go back to the stimulus packages.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the first stimulus package was designed in such a way to try to get a V curve out of the economy. In other words, we shot down very quickly. The idea was to get back up very quickly. If you recall, Trump wanted to open everything up at Easter time,
Right.
and that's
Sure.
what the money was sent out to as many people in the middle and lower classes as possible, so that they would get out in the economy, spend it, and possibly would be able to do that. The powers that be, I really think they scared us too well in terms of staying at home and so forth, to where people, have really been reluctant about getting back out. But as far as the stimulus packages are concerned, that was that first one. The second one, it's dead, at least as far as the Senate is concerned.
Right.
Can somebody explain to me why you couldn't take $3 trillion and do the same thing that Trump did the first time, maybe not through taxes, but through other means? Get the jobs that are in China that are vital. I mean, when we're talking about we can't get pharmaceutical items, we can't get face masks, and you consider that they build the computers that we need for our financial services. They provide us with all the parts that we need to have our furnaces that we need in the wintertime in where I live, or for our refrigerators, or for our vehicles, and everything else we can think of. Why, you want a use for those malls? Bring those jobs back to this country, and you can put those in the malls and turn the malls into factories. And by the way, there are a number of factories in my area, northeastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, that still exist from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
That were manufacturing factories.
Right.
And granted, we don't want to go back to that, but I think that we need to become far more self-sufficient than what we presently are.
Mike Miller, your response to that?
Well, yeah, I'm not one who thinks that the government should be making decisions on who's going to be a winner and who's going to be a loser. And I'm not exactly sure that you could bring back jobs into low value, high volume items like face masks and so forth. I just don't think that's the future of the United States. Now, maybe we should have more distributors than just one out of China. That way we're not completely dependent upon China. But I think that you're underestimating how difficult it would be to do this and how economically infeasible it is. And therefore, I'm not sure that this would happen.
And Bruce, let me just chime in. I don't know that everybody that lives in a nice community is going to want manufacturing right in the middle of their town center. That's a quality of life issue, especially if those factories are giving off some smokestacks or anything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom, thanks very much for your call. 1-800-723-8029 from coast to coast and border to border. We have one more segment. We got some callers on the line. We'll take them and hopefully your call as well. 1-800-723-8289 from coast to coast and border to border. I'm Bruce DuMont, tonight from Evanston, Illinois. Bruce DuMont, a reminder, if you will please, if you've got a few extra bucks, go to our GoFundMe page. It keeps the satellite and distribution of this program going forward. Things are getting a little expensive in the wake of having to find a new studio where we originate from every Sunday night. So go to beyondthebeltway.com, and right there on the front page, you're going to see my smiling picture and a little place to donate. And again, you can see that go up. And again, I want to thank Paul Rodriguez for being a donor just recently. And we thank you very much. I see he's listening to the program this evening. And it's always nice to get donations from people you don't know, especially if they're longtime listeners. It means the program is special to them. And it's certainly special for me every time to get together on Sunday night. But again, beyondthebeltway.com, and that's the GoFundMe page. You'll go right. You'll find it right away. Let's go to Edward, listening to us in Chicago, Illinois. Go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, good evening. What does the panel think about possibly having some kind of savings plan for young people like high school and college, so that way they're not depending on the government to send out checks whenever there's an emergency?
All right, let's get Terry your response. It's a government suggested savings account for young people.
Yeah, we've tried to create prepaid college plans and so forth. The problem is people don't have a high propensity to save. We came through a 10-year economic boom, the longest one on record. And not only did individuals not save and put money away, but the government for the last 4 years has had $1 trillion deficit every year anyway, in spite of record employment and record economic growth. So I guess we know that it's human nature that, as the Bible said, you have 7 good years and 7 lean years, put some away. this is something that goes back in human nature eons, and we haven't done a very good job of becoming savers. Now, once in a lifetime, something happens like the Great Depression, and a generation came out of the Depression with a real savings ethic. They were the ones that couldn't wait to burn their mortgages. You know, they pay them off and own their home free. And I grew up as a child of grandparents who had been in the Depression. And I mean, I guess I inherited that. I've always been a saver. But we haven't created a lot of incentives for saving, and all our incentives, all our commercials, all our society is about spending. So it's a great idea, but if the government can't save and individuals can't save, we're lost.
You know, your point about your grandmother. I remember, growing up, whenever my parents and my aunts and uncles got together, literally there was not one family get together where the subject did not come back to the Depression and how the Depression had impacted them, and that they were frugal. They learned a lesson from their childhood. But I'm wondering if the lesson that's being learned by young people now is the government's going to send you a check. It may not be a lot of check, but I mean, they're going through a misery right now, but misery is going to come with a check or an unemployment assistance. Mike, you agree with that?
I agree. This is not a job of government. This is a job of Terry Savage to work with private households and so forth. No, I agree. I think what you do
Terry.
and how important it is that you get people to manage their money properly and put money aside and so forth. That's not the job of government. That's the job of the private sector. And
education. And public education.
Yeah, that's correct.
Terry, go ahead. Take that.
No, I spent my whole life on that. I was really devastated in 2008 when I realized that my life's work about financial education, about saving, investing, and looking at the long term, really came down in a poof. And so I've become a little more sanguine about the fact that I can't change human nature, but that every once in a while I change some family's life by reading my books or by giving them the principles. And every once in a while, I went in a restaurant when restaurants were open last year, and a waiter, I looked up, he was an older gentleman, and he said, "You don't remember me, but I used to be at such and such when you came in. And 35 years ago, you had me open an individual retirement account, and I'm retiring next month. And it's because you told me to make it automatic and put the money in every month."
Yeah,
so
see,
it works. I know it works. It's just hard to teach, to convince.
And Bruce, most people feel that one of the main causes of the Great Depression was a lack of liquidity. So what the government has done here the last 2 months between the Fed and these stimulus checks has poured unprecedented amounts of liquidity into the economy. And that is what has, I really think, saved the country to where we are today. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, but to where we are today. So people getting used to checks coming in the mail, the alternative was to do nothing or much less. And I think we could be in a much rougher situation had we done nothing.
Oh, no, what the Fed did with regard to providing liquidity was absolutely essential. Without that, the economy would have collapsed.
But again, does it lead to a greater appeal for Bernie Sanders' democratic socialism, even though he's not going to be the nominee?
It does. It does, actually. It plays right into a lot of his principles, ironically.
Do you think it hurts Trump's reelection efforts? Or do you believe that he's cast a die and is not going to be able to get out from it? Rick, I'll let you tackle that one first.
I think it's going to be really difficult. Well, I mean, obviously November's a lifetime away from now, but it also depends on who his opponent is, if it's Biden and Biden's running mate and all the other issues. So I wouldn't count Trump out yet.
Terry Savage,
Thank
quick
goodness.
answer. Quick answer.
There are enough people out there that believe he still walks on water, that this is going to be a very strange election because it's going to be an election of extremes. And I don't think either of those extremes is what we need in our economy. That's really what's said. We need an economy that's growing and providing for all of us.
Mike Miller, 10 seconds to you.
No, I'm hoping that this is not a changing point for American society to move towards socialism. That would be a disaster.
Mike Miller, Terry Savage, Rick Levin, we thank you all very much. TerrySavage.com if you want all that your financial information and questions answered. Our thanks to Fritz Goldman, who's always helps with this program. And, of course, the ever-popular Andrew Marshall made it happen. I'm Bruce DuMont. Until next week, good night from Evanston, Illinois.